We'll come back to New Horizons in Chinese philosophy. Last time, in Lecture 3, we left off with two questions. Question number 1. Why was Confucius so confident that the highest values of human civilization had already been realized in the human past? The second question, how could he be so optimistic about the future restoration of Tao? Before we address ourselves to these two questions, let me clarify one point. These are philosophical questions, not historic questions. We will respond to the questions on philosophical ground rather than on historic ground. It is not that Confucius closely examined what was going on in the past and then arrived at the conclusion that the highest values of human civilization had really realized in the human past. How could Confucius have made sense of the highest values? To the best approximation, these were the highest values relative to Confucius' past. But that was not Confucius' initial intention. What Confucius wanted was the highest values forever. So, this is not an empirical issue. It is a philosophical issue. Maybe a more complete form of the question is like this. Why was Confucius so confident about the possible case in which the highest values of human civilization had already been realized in the human past? Or, to put it more philosophically, according to Confucius, how is it that Tao could have been practiced in the human past? Accordingly, the second question goes like this. According to Confucius, how is it that Tao is to be restored? To begin with, we have to say that Confucius was knowledgeable. He read a lot of history. He studied the classics like the Book of Poetry, the Book of Documents, the Book of Treatises, and so on and so forth. He once did archival work, so he was much involved in the Zhou culture, especially the rituals of Zhou. He was a master of ceremonies. For example, he was a master of funerals, so he could recognize that Tao had been realized in Xia dynasty and Shang dynasty. Although he admitted that he did not know much about the concrete prescriptions and institutions of the two dynasties. He said that the Zhou represented a higher realization of the Tao than its two predecessors, that is, the Xia dynasty and Shang dynasty. I quote from the Analects. Quote, Zhou could survey the two preceding dynasties, how rich the pattern of its culture. We follow Zhou, end quote. Well, the Zhou rituals provides a primary source for Confucius' understanding of rituals in general. Last time, we sketched a model of the Zhou rituals. That was a ritual structure in which role relations are defined in ritual terms rather than in biological terms. Unlike Shang culture, the Zhou people were concerned with rites rather than spirits. The ritual structure provides everything that is needed for the maintenance of order. The relation between heaven and the king is a father-son relation. But this relation does not build on biological basis. It is based on ritual principle. This makes possible a transcendental being. The relation itself is a formal relation. This will avoid ad hoc biological relation between the high god and the king in Shang dynasty. A ritual structure like this can be abstracted from concrete historic situations. It is something that constitutes the object of study in philosophy. The ritual structure provides a possible condition for realization of Tao. But what is Tao? How Tao is realized in the ritual structure? Tao could be used to refer to some total state of affairs. This is a normative state of affairs rather than a natural state of affairs. For instance, the son is supposed to bear filial piety toward the father. This is a normative state of affairs. What we want to figure out is how is it that a normative state of affairs like this could arise in a certain context. Within a ritual structure, for anyone to be a son, he has to be assigned to a definite position. That position required that the placeholder bear filial piety towards the placeholder in a different position, the position of a father. This is a formal definition. It is not the case that you love your father because your father gives birth to you. Rather, it is that you have to love your father if you position yourself in the ritual structure. So, the ritual structure provides a formal basis for normative state of affairs. However, the ritual structure is not a sufficient condition. In order for a normative state of affairs to arise, more things need to be done. The person who is positioned in a place within the ritual structure is able to realize the requirement of that position. Filial piety has to be cultivated in the family context. For example, a normative state of affairs does not autonomously arise. It needs a process of cultivation or a process of civilization in general. According to Confucius, the Tao is not a primordial condition of man in the state of nature. It is the Tao of an achieved universal, all-embracing ethical and political order. In the state of nature, few men were capable of realizing their full potentialities. It was only when the sage kings had actualized the patterns of the normative culture that it became possible for all human beings to achieve their full humanity. So far, we have discussed two conditions for realization of Tao. One, a ritual structure. The other, the process of civilization. When these two conditions are met, the Tao could be realized in a specific historic context. The age during which Confucius lived was a time of ritual decay. The ritual structure of Zhou dynasty was not well maintained. Ethics and politics were in decline. It was a sad picture in Confucius' mind. Something had to be done to remedy the terrible situation. Confucius was committed to the mission of the restoration of the Tao. How is it that Tao could be restored? This question has a lot to do with the previous question. As long as the two conditions are satisfied, the Tao could be restored. Here, the crucial point is that for any form of ritual structure, there corresponds a specific process of civilization. Confucius did not intend to recover what was actually going on in the Zhou dynasty. Rather, he was to initiate a specific ritual structure and its corresponding process of civilization. Confucius asserted that he was a transmitter and not one who makes up anything on his own. The Tao of the good order was realized within human experience of the past. The power holders in his time were incapable of transmitting the essence of this Tao. Confucius took it as his responsibility to restore the Tao. It is not that he transmitted the Tao that specifically worked in the previous dynasties, but rather that he reconstructed a ritual structure that was appropriate in his time and brought about a process of civilization in a new social context. He took himself to be a historic link in cultural evolution. This way of doing philosophy has been a paradigm in China's intellectual history. Let us now turn to the details of Confucius' philosophy. We are going to discuss three topics. The first is the philosophy of Li. The second is the philosophy of Ren. The last one, the ethical and political implications